affirmations. Go. Wake up every day and say your affirmations. Go. Wake up every day and say your affirmations. Go. Wake up every day and say your affirmations. Go. Happiness and kindness is a choice. Make up.
All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Things That People Don't Want to Talk About. I am John Skywalker, the Sly Talker, lyricist, spoken word artist, martial artist, personal trainer, lover of life, student of psychology, and I am a father. And I am joined by my two guests here, Saba Diamin. Would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
I am Sin Sabah Diamin. That just means brother teacher Diamin. That's literally what that means in the Medu Neter. I am a teacher of the Osirian spiritual science, that is the ancient Kemetic spiritual science, as well as an entrepreneur, father, and just lover of life altogether. And I'm lover of wisdom and knowledge and understanding. Salute. Still y'all word.
All right.
Salute.
All right. And we have King Newborn in the house. King Newborn, introduce yourself, brother.
Peace. This is King Newborn. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Newborn Everything. And as always, I am of service.
I am.
Ashe.
All right. So we have a fourth podcast member, God Level, who is not with us at the moment. She's doing God level things, but we're going to keep it rocking because, this topic is definitely near and dear to all of us, very foundational, especially. We're going to be talking about the violation of Black boys, right? This is in conjunction with a series that our podcast is hosting, where we're talking about essentially the members of the Black family, right? We spoke in December about the violation of Black girls. And so here's our first installment of the violation of Black boys. Do any of y'all want to kick it up? I mean, should we like kind of pick it up where we were hitting that backstage?
Well,
should we pick it up there, or should we kind of just take a different direction?
Well, I don't know because they're so new. We have to be careful of spoiling it for folks because it's so new. We don't want to spoil it for anybody. But if we can skate around spoilers and just pick out, I think we can do that. Let's just do. In fact, it just might be just another promo for it, so it's okay. I'll support Ron Coogler and everybody that's involved in that. So let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay. Shout outs to Shelly. I see you, Queen. All right. So I thought what was interesting when God Level proposed this topic was the first thing I thought about was childhood sexual trauma. And then to find out a few days ago, it's like, yo, let's talk about the whole thing. Let's talk about how everything is encompassed in the violation of Black boys. And it's like, wow. So there are other elements, especially like the socialization of Black boys, right? And how there's violation there. There's the violation through the education system. And then, of course, we all acknowledge the prison pipeline system that's baked into our institutions, right? But does anybody, before I, say anything, does anybody want to tackle this from any particular angle?
Man, there's so many angles to attack it from, but I don't know. I want to go with the flow. Go ahead and do your thing. I want to go with the flow.
I mean, we could talk, man. I was gonna pull from one of our posts from the group, which shout outs to everybody who replied to the post this week. I think I only had like maybe 3 or 4. It was tough putting those questions out there because I didn't want anybody to have to get too personal too soon. Although we have created a safe space here, and we have made some very valiant attempts to create a safe space in our group. We know that, there's always an opportunity for human error, right? But let's start with that, right? Let's start with the question regarding a safe space, because again, when we're talking about these sensitive issues, they're very much a requirement. I remember just over a decade ago, that concept, a safe space, even though it's been with us, we didn't necessarily have the language for that. That wasn't really a popular concept, a safe space, right? That was usually something reserved for like professional groups or organizations, right, that were privy to that, not only the information but also just the design, right? So that was usually just a professional concept. But I'm glad that the culture took that on and said, all right, we're going to make this a very common concept, a safe space where anybody could do it, and it's very portable. And of course, I know that there's a risk there because everybody isn't skilled at creating a safe space, let alone knowing what it is and how to honor it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because, everybody's not a professional, right? And again, if it requires, skill and experience to do that, but we're also as a culture saying that everyone has the ability, the power to do it, even still, there's no formal education for the public to institute a safe space. Like I know how I do it personally, but I also have some formal education in psychology, and then also I've read up, right? But someone, my next door neighbors, creating a safe space, their safe space or their concept of a safe space may be vastly different than mine, and it may not even qualify as a safe space. So I wanted to put that out there because, since we're kind of like, I don't know, in limbo of which way to start, I'm just gonna pick one. Like, hey, a safe space
got a
is always
question.
a good place.
I think that's a good spot.
Okay.
I think it's a good place to start. Go ahead, brother.
No,
What's your
I
question?
was gonna allude to that as well. But then also I want to ask from either one of you brothers, when we say violated or violation, from what area are we speaking from on violation? Because it could be multiple different ways to be violated,
Right.
or just in general. That's
Well,
I mean, I'm
uh,
just curious.
I think it's open. So we're talking about
Okay,
violations
cool,
as an
cool.
umbrella, and then now
Okay.
now we can detail the unique ways that we're that we see violation in different situations. So you're
Exactly.
absolutely right. How can we be violated?
Exactly.
I saw the question as well, and I just saw it today. In fact, not just moments ago, and it's so funny because we were, in my spiritual service today. I'm always in charge of a segment that we call the Daily Word and Affirmation, and
Ooh.
today's daily word and affirmation was, a friend of a wise person is a wise person. Okay, a friend of a wise person is a wise person, and I think, and what I alluded to was because that is a safe space for the wise person. And what I did, let me read a little something from the Kabbalah just to give you a little bit of what I did for them. But it was the divine
Oh, from the
paradox, and
Kabbalah?
coming from the Hermetic philosophy, right? And it says this. So remember, we're talking about the fully realized. We're talking about the wise person. Now, here it says the half wise, recognizing the comparative unreality of the universe, imagine that they might defy its laws, but such are vain and presumptuous fools, and they are broken against the rocks and torn asunder by the elements by reason of their folly. The truly wise, knowing the nature of the universe, use law against laws, the higher against the lower. In the art of alchemy, transmute that which is undesirable into that which is worthy, and thus triumph. Now, you have to understand. Now look at the dichotomy of the two mindsets that we're talking about between the half wise and the wise. Okay, if the wise understand things from a standpoint of law, then when he's in a company of the half-wise, the half-wise won't be able to have conversations with him. They won't understand his actions. It would look like him being too passive or weak when he's working from an energetic standpoint. So the wise works from a plane of causation, not from the plane of effects, right? So it's just an uncomfortable space for a wise person to be in the company of the half wise all the time, because then he would have to constantly explain himself, constantly move to a point to where it's not really reflecting. Let me bring the brother in. Where it's not reflecting his level of mindset. So a lot of times, so that's it. That would be his safe space, just being in that company. So I'm saying all that to say this is that my safe space is much like that with those who are when I'm in the company of those that employ and implement the same level of understanding that I do, or even better, so I can at least reach up, because I'm looking also to be taught and things like that. But those who don't understand, then it's like John Henry Clark said. He said, "I only debate my equals, and all others I teach." So the thing about that, anybody else who is not on that level of understanding that I have, then I'm teaching. But do I always want to teach? If I'm teaching, that means I'm not in my authentic self. That means I've got to now break things down. We got to always be in study. We always got to, be in this mode of contemplation. It's not allowing me to be in a relaxed mode. So in that being in a relaxed mode, that's your safe space. And I can only be that in the company of people of at least like mindset, or those with a higher mindset, you see, and making sure that I don't ruffle the feathers of those that have a higher mindset, so just being in a listening mode. So that's why I didn't answer it, because that was my answer. Because that was my answer, and it would have went all the way around there. But for the most part, that's a very, very, it's a great question. And I hope people are satisfied. I didn't see all the answers though.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share some of those, because there was really some impressive ones, especially the last one. Hold on, let me pull that up. All right, so we had 6 respondents. Natasha says, a safe space to me is to be able to openly talk about things that concern you with people who get and open their space with warm arms.
Yeah.
God Level says, my safe space is John Nicholson, non-judgmental. He allows me to talk about anything without feeling judged by what I am saying. Okay.
Boo.
Acknowledge.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
My safe space resides where I can be vulnerable without judgment, to be listened to, and not just be heard, because there's a bit difference there, and to love without reservation and being able to receive it as well. Shelley actually said, not sure it exists. Dang, that's unfortunate. Now, Theron had a very, very detailed and very extensive answer. For the person deciding whether a space is safe, this is for the person deciding whether a space is safe. How does this person respond to vulnerability of other people? Was that good or bad? Has this person been accountable for their actions and personal growth? Is this person able to admit they're wrong in a situation? Do they run, deflect, shame, guilt when confronted with an issue? Ooh, that's a good one. All right. Do they present do they present an air of a real person or perfection? I like that. Perfection versus a real person. Have they gone through some dark times themselves? And then this is for those who are opening up to being in a safe space. Opening up to being in a safe space. Have I learned lessons about relationships with those in my space? Let me say that again. Have I learned lessons about relationships with those in my space? Do those in my space encourage me to grow and hold me accountable? Do I understand my shadow and my ego? Are they a part of me, or am I still in denial? Can I give that understanding to others because I was once, or still may be there? Do I understand that my advice, if given, may not be needed? I like that one. That's a good one. Am I okay with only advising if asked? Do I see them as a project? That's a sensitive one right there. Does my ego want part of being their solution? Don't make it about me.
And who's the author of
Does it
this
make
answer?
me happy? Say again?
I said, who's the author of this answer?
Oh, this is Theron Steele.
Okay. A lot of things I like to talk
Let's see.
about.
Does it make me happy to see them thrive / release pain and be consoled? Do I understand the main want of people is to be seen and understood? And even if I don't understand, even if it doesn't make sense, will I be able to let this person be who and where they are without needing to save or change them? Judgment. What's that? LOL.
So
that one.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, and then I'll address some of that. Go ahead.
Peace to the king that left that consciousness. I want to piggyback off the LOL for judgment. And before I say what I want to say, I do expound on the fact what Master Skywalker alluded to, that God level podcast, things that people don't want to talk about, is a safe place. But it is a safe place. I would like to add, when it comes to judgment, that's part of your senses. So on a day-to-day practice, you're always in judgment of things, whether it's near or far. But more importantly, the things that we don't want to be judged on are some of the things that we don't take the time to judge ourselves. Like you can't elude from what is, quote unquote, from your moral compass, what is right and then what is wrong, and then do something and be like, well, I shouldn't be judged. But did you not judge yourself prior to, when you made that decision, that choice, and that execution, complete follow through? And I just wonder about that, because a lot of times we live in fear of being judged, even when we know what we did was absolutely wrong, that brought us to a certain point of a consequence. And ultimately, it's the one thing that we do consistently, but we don't look at it as judgment. We look at it as we're offering our opinion without being asked what is our opinion. That's why I'm saying salute to the king. He hit a lot of conscious points. I'm just curious. I'm throwing something out there. I'm not necessarily pressing the issue beyond the fact that God level things that people don't want to talk about. Podcast is a safe place. We're about the culture. We're about being of service to the community. True enough. But I think at some point we have to respect the fact, as a human being, as a being of consciousness, there is nothing that you don't do that you even question yourself. Should I be doing this? Anything beyond that point is either you're acting out of your moral compass, or you're just doing flat out what you want to do. And that applies to anything. I'm just saying. What say you?
All right. So in regards to that, I think what people fail to understand is there's a difference between making a judgment and then judging.
Yes.
There's a difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We make judgments all the time. It's a part of our life.
Yep.
For us to make it's the way that we measure ourselves, measure our next steps, measure the quality and what those things are that we decorate our lives with. We make judgments. And when it comes to judging people, people judging people, is when you have deemed them a certain thing, when you have deemed somebody a liar, when you have deemed somebody a thief. See, those are judgments. That's when you're judging somebody. But those kind of things, because we can't put those type of labels on people because they don't stick. And the reason why is because the human personality, it changes. So even one who steals today can actually transcend that behavior tomorrow. So it won't even be true. So there's no sense of judging people because people can change. But you can make judgment about where you want this person, or if you want this person to play a part in your life or not. You can make that judgment. You see? So that's the difference between judging and making a judgment. So that's the main thing. And I think people need to keep that in mind when they're talking, because I hear people talking about judging all the time. I don't want to be judged and blah blah blah. So you're right about that, brother. But the whole thing is, who cares? Because what people think about you is mostly their business. It ain't yours.
Yeah.
You got to understand there are so many lenses that people are looking at you through, and ain't none of it got nothing to do with you. Everything has something to do with their past. Because remember, just like we had talked about how parents raise their children through their own triggers, but they also view you through their own triggers. Ain't got nothing to do with you. So I wouldn't even waste energy, mental energy, emotional energy, or physical, for that fact, worrying about if somebody's judging me. Doesn't matter. That's their problem, not mine. But the thing about it is that somebody who is sure-footed, confident, and intentional with their steps is not worried about that in the first place. They're never worried about it, because they know that the people making a judgment about how they're going to play a part in their life, that it's going to weed out those that shouldn't be there, and it's going to allow those who should be there in harmony and order and balance to be there, because they're sure-footed. Like, I'm setting it up with my own behavior, with my own actions and my own moral compass. I'm setting it up for who it is that I'm decorating my life with. So you better make your judgment, because sometimes I might be too much for you. Okay. And I ain't ashamed of that. I ain't for everybody. That's for sure. I'm not for everybody. So you make your judgment. Don't you get in this pool if you can't swim. That's the way I'm telling you, because it's going to stay deep. It ain't going to get shallow for you. Period. So make your judgment, please. Okay. But don't get in here and complain about what you stepped into. So this is how we should. So I embrace that. So again, that's their business, not mine. I'm going to keep being who I am, because I'm intentionally being a person that you can come to, that's safe for you, that you can get wisdom and knowledge from, that you can learn from, who's actually interested in for your well-being and for your evolution. Okay. There was something else that he talked about. What was it? It was what was it? It was something that he had mentioned that I wanted to point out. But overall, it really seemed like that. That Theron, you say his name was? His name is
Theron.
Yeah, Theron.
Theron. Theron.
Okay, so it really seems like that Theron also have had that. That's somebody who's done some work on themselves, who's done some study. And also, see, we can't hold that level of understanding and realization to on everybody. Most people ain't gonna be thinking and breaking down, whether it's your ego and your shadow self and all. That's intellectual talk.
Yeah.
Of those who have given great consideration and sat down in a 101 class and have come up with all of this, right? So some of it might be valid, but that's not the way that the average person thinks. So they're not going to be thinking like that, So I think the answer was a little bit, to me, over the top. Okay, and it's not relevant on so many levels, because we don't really operate and break ourselves down like that, because everything, all aspects of us move as one whole. The shadow, the ego, the spiritual self, the light body, all of that moves as one whole the whole time. We don't break ourselves down like that. And everything is presenting itself in different degrees. So that's gonna determine what aspect of ourselves is going to be dominant in that particular situation. You see, sometimes the ego needs to step up and do its thing, and sometimes it needs to move out of the way. You see, so can you be who and what you need to be when and when you need to be it? That's the way of the master. Not afraid of any of that, because he understands himself. Because I understand myself, I let you know I embrace ego. I embrace my ego, but it is me. I define what my ego is going to be made of, how my ego moves, what it engages, and how it presents. So ego it doesn't come before my own will. It doesn't become before my will. You know, so it's not driven by frivolous, materialistic pursuits. You see, so that's the thing. But it's still the ego nonetheless, which is nothing more than your personality and how you present and how you identify with yourself and want others to identify you as, you know? So that's the thing. But overall, very, very well thought out and detailed answer, Theron. Very good.
And Ivy just replied. Shout outs to Ivy. She just replied to that very same post. A safe space is a space where I feel free to be expressively me, whether that's emotionally, spiritually, physically, creatively, weirdly, or whatever. LOL. I just created an art space because I needed one dedicated space to express myself. We see some themes in these safe spaces, and the reason why this relates to the topic is because essentially everyone deserves a safe space, right? And this is strongly related to the topic because for a lot of boys and then men as well, they don't know what that means. They don't know what a safe space means because throughout their childhood growing up, they've sort of been in a very challenged space, you know, where there's a lot of eyes that's already painting them, illustrating them in a very negative light before they have a chance to fully express their genuine truth, you know. So there could be a lot of repressed emotions, a lot of repressed energies, simply because they're not in a safe space to let that out, right? Especially if they're going through something traumatic, right? But we do see these themes here in these responses that there's an awareness that whoever we are with, they are competent. They may not be the most knowledgeable, but they're competent, as in they're calm, they're their authentic selves, they have some experience, they have empathy, they have compassion, they're virtuous, and they're pretty much clear-headed. And that creates a sense of safety because you're engaging with someone that sees you, that is actively listening. That's another quality, someone who can actively listen, that can collect the information. And even on the same trajectory with the judgment, right? A lot of the times when we say we don't want to be judged, we're saying we don't want to be condemned. We don't want a negative evaluation, and it's just concentrated only on the negative aspects. A lot of the times when we're talking about judgment, we're talking about a bias. There is a slanted view or a distorted view of the full picture that is me. You're only looking at the bad parts. You're only seeing me through this peephole. And there's so much glory behind that peephole, but you're refusing, or perhaps you're too incapable or too incapacitated to see beyond that peephole, or to at least go through the door and see that there's a whole world that is me, that lies beyond it. I like how he also broke down vulnerability, right? Because safe space and vulnerability go hand in hand. And those are like some very core ingredients as it relates to the violation of Black boys, because we're recognizing that in the violation of Black boys, whatever that may be, it indicates that Black boys are vulnerable, right? But that vulnerability is going up against some cultural forces, some cultural stereotypes. Are Black boys seen as vulnerable? Perhaps up to a certain age, right? Up to a certain age.
What makes them vulnerable though?
Oh man, it's the same level of vulnerability that all people have, all humans have, right? Being vulnerable to being killed, being vulnerable to social criticism, being vulnerable to foods, gangs, negative lifestyles,
Sure, but
media influence.
my question is what components are missing that allows us vulnerable? In other words, open to these possibilities.
Wait, say again. What are the components that make?
What are the missing components? Because obviously something's not there. Something's not there. And something, so there's a lack of protection there.
Mhm.
So what is that makes us so vulnerable? You know.
Well, one of those variables is the social perception of black boys, right? So
Mhm.
I was researching some of this, right? Just one particular sphere of influence, academia, right? Um, and of course, the first thing that comes to mind is a post that God Level posted earlier this week. Dr. Joanna Kunjufu, I think that's his name. He wrote the book the conspiracy to destroy black boys, right? And he was talking about the all the elements. It's like I think it was like a 1 hour lecture, uh but
Oh yeah, I
he
saw
raised
that too.
awareness, right? And there was a lot of emphasis, even though he tackled all those variables, talking about uh media influences, institutional racism, but he also touched on the socialization of black boys, not just through the mothers, but also through the culture and education, right? So there was one particular part where he was or maybe he didn't talk about this, maybe it wasn't him, but I recall that there was a Yale study, a Yale University study that found preschool teachers and staff showing signs of implicit bias or implicit racial bias when disciplining students and anticipating misbehavior. So what we're talking about here, that's just a fancy way of saying that teachers as well as other school officials are pre-wired or preconditioned, I'm sorry, preconditioned to perceive black boys in a certain light. Preconditioned. Now, this is just something that they learned over time. And
Yes.
so if teachers are
Hmm.
doing this, you can imagine that the society at large, whether it be the court systems, whether it be daycare centers, it could be really in any commercial store, how they perceive black boys before they even get a chance to plead their case and express who they truly are. So there's already a prejudice that's deeply baked into our system, or I'm sorry, into the American culture, right? I found that study pretty interesting because it was a study that assessed over 130 educators, and they were looking for challenging behavior. So it was four children. It was two blacks, two whites, uh, each a female and a male, right? And even though none of the children were misbehaving, they were just playing with blocks. Even though none of them were misbehaving, the teachers were watching the black boy more than the other three, right? And they had this software that detect um, where their eyes were gazing, and they found out that most of the time their eyes were set on the black boy, so they were anticipating him to exhibit some challenging behaviors, right?
Yes.
There's also research out there that shows that teachers tend to perceive black children as older, less innocent, more culpable, um, and just generally more criminal than other children. So what do we call that? I think adultification. I think that's what that's called, the adultification, right? Where you're projecting negative behaviors on black children compared to others, right? And so, yeah, we're talking essentially about prejudice, which we all know is deeply ingrained in the American consciousness, right?
And this is
So,
especially if the children are dark skinned.
yes,
You know,
what?
especially yes, especially if they're dark skinned. And I grew up as you can see, a dark skinned child, and I was probably about two shades darker coming up. When I was growing up, But of course, I was always, that's the thing that made me guilty of everything. You know, they were already preconditioned with this idea that just because I'm dark skinned, that I'm gonna be already a challenge. I'm gonna be violent. I'm gonna be, you know, disruptive and so forth. So I already had that when I was the nicest kid because I didn't want no beef with anybody. But that goes back, and I want to let you know that turns to colorism because that happens also within our
Yeah.
own community.
Yes.
Okay, and it transposes not just to from the white community, but also the community, the Hispanic or Latin community, even the Asian community. Anybody on the planet, any culture on the planet, when they see dark people, they automatically have this preconceived idea that dark people are worse, they're criminals, and so forth. They even carry this conversation on within their own communities. So if you ever want to know why it is that you're already guilty just because you're dark skinned, when you just stepped on the scene, got goodness in your heart, but that's not what they're feeling. It's almost like you got to prove that you ain't, but you got to go through a lot of stuff. You got to go a lot of stuff to prove that. So yeah, that's and that is definitely one of the violations of Little Black Boys. Definitely one of the black.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already guilty before we even act. We're already
Mm.
guilty.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. So you got to prove your innocence already at an early age. You got to prove your innocence,
that's
which
right.
that leads to certain conversations in the culture. The talk, right? We all have to have the talk, unfortunately, but then also realistically, we have to have the talk. But that's the biggest one, right? What is the cultural perception of black boys? And that cultural perception is essentially it's passive, but it's also it's passively hostile because we know that perception shapes your reality, right? So it's going to color how you react to your environment. You have these black boys that are in your environment. It's going to offset how you treat them. Now, of course, that could be mitigated by a little bit of education and personality factors, right? But just in general, the mere fact that the society who doesn't know you, they only know an archetype of you or a representation of you, and that is coloring their treatment of you. And they're looking for what is that called? There's a self-fulfilling prophecy here because the black boys are also aware of this. To some degree, you're aware that you have these eyes that are looking at you a certain way. Even like how teachers speak to black children, right? Again, we're not making sweeping generalizations here, audience members. We're really identifying certain collections of educators that do this, right? But even in how black boys are being spoken to, they tend to get talked at, not talked to, talked at. And there is a difference, right? It's almost like you're demeaning the child, or they don't have a sense of autonomy, or you're undermining their intelligence, right? I'm talking at you because I already have a pre-notion of who you are. I'm already sort of seeing you as threatening, or I'm seeing you as a problem. So I need to talk to you this way because I feel like if I talk to you this way, you'll get it. Even though there's another way. You can be more kinder, you can be more gentler, you can share the safe space with me. You're not going to create a safe space for me because you don't even believe I deserve to be safe. In fact, you think I'm the threat. But it's subtle, right? It's subtle. It's not a boisterous vocalization. Oh, that black boy who was 7 years old is a danger now. Right. So with that pre-notion, there comes this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, because if he recognizes that this is how the world sees him, he's likely to just, hey, why resist? Why be anything other than how they see me already? I might as well just cave in and just be this way. They already see me this way. So I guess that's who I am. And so even with the educators, they're looking for behaviors that match their perception. They have a conference. So you could take two children exhibiting the same behavior, right? One black, one white, or one Asian, one black. One is being vocal. And even though both of them are vocal, the black boy is seen as more antagonistic. Oh, he's way too loud. But you got this, Asian kid over here that's doing the same thing, or this white boy over here that's doing the same thing, right? we don't give, as a culture, we don't give the same treatment to white boys, not even white teens. We don't look at them as murderers and terrorists, domestic terrorists right off the bat. We don't say, oh man, that boy's going to be a terrorist one day. You don't have to worry about that treatment, even though the statistics show, right? But they don't have, they're not subject, they're not vulnerable to that level of scrutiny, even though it's there within minority communities, but it doesn't seem powerful enough to sway any legislation. It's not powerful enough to even sway their perception of themselves. Like they don't see themselves growing up as a domestic terrorist.
Of course
they don't have
not.
that.
I'm gonna say that it's because they are the ones who are setting the narrative. That's why we talk about the general narrative. The general consensus is always based on the word of a European. It's how, because you get people like Timothy McVeigh, you get all these mass murderers, committing all these mass murderers. They've been white folks, white boys, white men and things like that. But they never get, now if you put that, all it takes is one Islam person to bomb somebody, then the whole culture gets blamed for being bombers, terrorists, the whole culture. It takes one black person to get caught with a gun and shoot somebody. Now we all are being blamed for being thugs. Just takes one. But we, over the history, even in my lifetime, we have had how many mass murders, how many bombings and things like that caused by white men, and still they are not labeled as murderers or mass terrorists. They're not. In fact, when we look at who has actually gone continent to continent throughout the world and creating oppression and things like that, we know it's been a white man. But they're not labeled as that. It's because they're the ones setting the narrative. They're the ones setting the narrative. So that's the thing. And I'm only saying that to this. I'm not mad at them for that. What I think the problem is that we're not trying to set our own narrative. That's the issue. Listen, I ain't mad at them. They need to, they're going to continue to do that. They're going to continue to set the narrative, but it's up to us to set our narrative. It's up to us to set that narrative regardless. So it always takes an order to stop an order. Okay. So their order has been set by their narrative. It is time for us to set an order set by our narrative, period. And I think everybody should do that. How do you want to be seen? How do you want the world to perceive you, period? And that's sure not the way, because I could tell you everything. When you let somebody else tell your story, then what the perception of you is going to be false. It's going to be false. Look how many years we've learned and just from the Bible and other places, how bad Egypt was. But then we go digging into the sands, we find that was probably the most peaceful place, the most divine people that's ever lived in the history of mankind. Okay? So that's what I mean. We have to control the narrative, period. So so that was a good point. Good point, Master Skywalker.
I missed it. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it.
Now I want to. Hey, Queen.
Hey, Queen.
But you know what? And I want to just briefly touch on that point right there that you made about us controlling our narrative. We do have a plentitude in Black culture of positive Black male role models. I want us to acknowledge that we have made some very valiant strides in the history of this country to ensure that our image, for both genders, has been sustained, and that there's plenty out there. Even I don't know if you guys have heard of this child genius. His name is David Balogun. David Balogun. He's 9 years old. This kid wants to be an astrophysicist, a nuclear engineer, and he said like 2 other things, right? Yeah, he was on the news and he talked to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Woo! And he was about to give a hot take on one of the flaws in the Big Bang Theory, but they cut him off before he really got started, right? But nonetheless, I just wanted to kind of it was good. Like, what? Anyways, but this is This is a 9-year-old black boy, right? And he's on national news. And he's talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, also a famous, popular, and brilliant astrophysicist in the Western world, right? And to see these two energies in the same space, talking to each other, you see also this boy's parents. You see that he's got both of his parents in the household, right? The boy he's already in college. He graduated high school at the age of 9. He's in his first year of college. And, he was, when they interviewed him, he was just like, hey, I just graduated high school. That's all I did. And Neil deGrasse was like, hey, just so that you know, that's not normal. Okay. From your
Right.
perspective, hey, you're just like, hey, it's just high school. Right.
Mhm.
So I wanted to highlight that because it's images like that are, and again, this was on, I think it was MSNBC or CNN. I think it was on CNN. I can't remember. But they did allow that to come to the forefront, right? So that's just one example. There's plenty of black child prodigies that are out there, right? Boys and girls. And so it's not like we're not getting any coverage at all, but that doesn't remove the fact that there is essentially a pandemic, a conspiracy, as Dr. What's his name? Dr. Joanna, as he was saying, it's a conspiracy. And it's been proliferated for a long time, right? So he was just highlighting that. Guy Level, did you want to take the conversation in a different direction?
It's too late for that. Y'all are 46 minutes in. I don't want to change route. We still have next week. I'm glad I have a part 1 and a part 2. I did reach out to Dortez. I talked to him about exactly what I wanted to talk about as far as the when I put violation of black boys, that was just to catch your attention. But I wanted to dive in on the mental abuse, the sexual abuse, the emotional abuse, the physical abuse that they have suffered coming up, and especially growing up in a household where there's only one parent, which is the mother, and no pun intended, but a woman cannot raise a man. I talked to a gentleman today, and he was telling me how when he was growing up, he was told that you're not allowed to cry. You have to hold all that emotion in. So just that's what I basically wanted to hit on. And it's okay, but I've been listening to you all, especially Diamond. You've hit on some really good points as far as judgment, because the waters get deep over here. I heard that.
That's right.
I heard the questions asked about, a safe space. All of you gentlemen are a safe space for me. I can call and talk to you all about anything. I'm not going to lie. John is going to be first on that list. John, you busy?
Only by history. It's only because of history.
Only because of history. And
because John is so great.
Yeah, I have learned to be able to sit down and talk to John about practically any and everything, and he does not show any judgment at all. I can call him and say, John, you know what? I'm gay. And he'll be like, okay, that's what's up. Period. He won't question that at all. So, when did this happen? And I didn't see this coming. And that's not going to be him. He's going to be very supportive. He's going to allow me to talk out anything I have going on. And then he's only going to respond when I ask.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm still working on it. It's a practice. It's a practice.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Now
it's a hard one.
Working out. Don't text John, because I was working out one time, and he sent me a message. He was like, "You could do better," and I was like,
"That's what we got to do." We got to keep you out of that autonomous mode, because if you think you did well, that means you need to do more. That's exactly what that means.
Definitely ain't calling you.
Oh no, don't look. I'm a master at that. Don't call me, because I'll
definitely ain't calling you. No.
And John the same way. I already know. I see him work out. So no, that's the way you get that.
Him and
but
yeah.
But
that's the direction.
So that safe space concept is very important, especially for me now, because now that I'm aware of it as an adult, it took, oh my gosh, it took what, 20 years for me to figure out that that's something that everyone needs, is a safe space. Like, even if you don't get it from anybody else, you got to be able to give it to yourself. And there are some black men out there, a lot of black men out there, that haven't given themselves that safe space yet. You can't rely or over rely. You can't rely on anybody to do it for you. So you are fortunate if someone creates it for you and invites you in, and and tests and proves the validity of that safe space, right? But this is very important, especially if you're a black man, because you will recognize not only the importance for yourself, but you can also pass that on down, understanding that, hey, you know what, I recognize these symptoms in this black kid right here, this black teenager, this black boy, and I know what he needs. He needs a safe space, and he needs someone that looks like him or can at least reflect his experiences back to him. Mm-hmm. And I know this is a very challenging feat, right? Because there's a lot of skill required in order to exercise this, especially on the emotional aspect, where a lot of black boys don't have that safe space to express those emotions. Or if they do, it's a very limited range. It's a very limited scope. You're allowed to express anger, right? And if you express that anger, it's up to a certain degree. It has to look a certain way. And then you might be able to express some versions or some flavors of happiness, right? I just saw a TikTok about that before, where they were talking about Drake, and I like how Drake handles, the trolling that's out there in the world. But also it's just like, dang, that's kind of messed up. The man was, you see pictures of him genuinely being happy. He's smiling and cheesing, right? And we're making fun of that.
Wow.
Like, oh, look at how cheesy he's smiling. You're not supposed to smile that big as a black man. You ain't supposed to smile that big. Really? Like, and then of course there's the TikToks out there that sort of antagonize black men. Like, if you laugh too hard or if you smile a certain way, you get stigmatized as, homosexual, or you kind of fruity, or you kind of sweet, right? That's out there too. And so that kind of leads into this segue about the factors that influence us disclosing our abuse from the past, right? So one of them, I believe, is homophobia, right? The black culture has not gotten past this. It's deeply embedded, and there's this lens of ignorance, right? Even though it's becoming more acceptable, there's still this disdain for it because there's not a lot of understanding. It's like, dang, this is still an issue in our community, and rightfully so, right? But we're placing too much emphasis on it, right? It really is a phobia for some of us. Right, really. Well, let's look at the commentary on that, right? So I posed a question in the group, and it was mainly a poll. It was essentially a poll, and I requested that some people explain their answer. The question is: do you think homophobia is a factor that discourages boys and men from disclosing their childhood sexual trauma? Now, I should have said just trauma in general. I really should have, because even if it wasn't sexual in nature, being vulnerable is still viewed as feminine. Being vulnerable for a black man is still viewed as feminine. For example, and we have plenty of social media videos out there that prove this case, that if a man expresses, hey man, it's been a rough day at work, yada yada yada, or I'm not friends with my homeboy anymore, or man, these bills stressing me out, or oh my God, I didn't get the job, yeah. He's going through a tough time, but even with his woman, he doesn't feel confident to express that to her. A lot of black men get beat up for that, right? I can't be vulnerable with her, but there's an expectation for me to be vulnerable with her,
right?
And there's a lack of trust, right?
Yeah. Did you want to say something about that, God level?
Me and John really just talked about this a couple of days ago.
Oh, we did, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
we did when it comes to a man. When they have a lack of trust, they're not gonna tell you everything. They're gonna share
Yeah.
so much with you, um, but the rest they're gonna keep to themselves, because John said something that you've shown him or did or maybe even said, um, shut him down from being able to communicate something that's really going on with him to you. So yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
I do think that there's a skill, there's an acquired skill when it comes to listening to
Mm,
a black man bare his heart. There's an acquired skill to that. Let's talk about some things you should not do. Okay,
offer solutions.
what this is going to be a solution, saying what
No,
you
no, no,
should
no, no,
not
no,
do.
no, 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 no. When you're listening to a black man, someone,
Hmm.
and it all depends on who you're listening to. Um,
Hmm.
some men are very prideful. They just may be just looking for someone, um, to listen to them, allow them to speak, but don't jump in and offer, oh, this is what you should do, and you should do this, and you should do this, and you should do that.
Right, right.
No,
Challenge
no,
him.
yeah,
You should challenge him to think for himself,
yeah,
and to
yeah.
figure out if he's trying to figure something out. A lot
Right.
of times,
I'm
Yeah.
learning.
because
I'm
be-
learning. I'm learning.
because a lot
My
of
next
times
relationship gonna be boom,
we'll see. Okay. But
boom.
a lot of times he's just bearing his heart, right?
Yes.
Just laying his heart out there. But the one thing you should not do is make him feel like you patting him over the head and saying there. You should not make any type of moves like that, or making him, or dragging him down into an infantile version of himself.
Mm.
You should never do that. But some people do that thinking they're supporting them. That's not what they want.
Give,
You don't want to make him feel like that
give an
he's
example of that, if you will.
so saying oh there, I'm feeling for you, oh I'm so sorry that happened, and like really going into, that's not what he's looking for.
Okay.
He's
Treating them
not
like a
looking for that.
baby.
Yeah,
Mm.
talking to him like a baby, or even taking him down to their
Mm.
kid level and blah blah, because you
Mm.
make him think that your judgment of him is that he's complaining,
Hmm.
or he's throwing a temper tantrum, and you're not really listening. So
Mm.
what he's looking for is, in some sense, validation, and then direction on out,
Ooh.
some sort of encouragement. Like, okay, let me build you back up. Have you forgotten who you are? Okay, you
Hmm.
are a master at this, and this is your personality, and right now
Yeah.
you need to get back on that. You need to stand in the light of who you are.
You got to be
That's what.
careful with that too.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. That's the thing. Trust me. Look, I have students that are both made of men and women. They all come to me for the same thing, because that's where I let them know. The only thing I'm concerned with is your spiritual well-being. So whatever complaints or whatever you're going to lament to me about, I'm gonna tear that apart and show you where you're letting yourself down. Okay, and then I'm gonna charge you to get back on it, because we got principles that holds us accountable to our spiritual development. And every situation that comes to you is to reveal what your spiritual deficiencies are. So let's reveal those. Let's talk about those deficiencies. They all feel so comfortable coming to me, because they know I'm gonna tell them like it is, and it's no judgment. But we'll talk through it. We'll get them through it, and they're empowered, and they've transcended that particular issue. You see. So, but that's the way. Men don't like to be always, taken down and made feel like they little boys just because they're bearing their heart. So that's one of the main things. But also, don't challenge him. Don't degrade him. Don't tell him that, oh, you're a punk. You're acting like a bit. All this guy. Don't do that, because then that
I
turns
have
into a
Mm.
challenge.
never. I
Then that
have
turns to a
never.
challenge.
I
Yeah,
have never.
you haven't.
I have never said stop acting like a bitch.
Oh yeah.
I've never
Now,
said anything like that.
now men accept that from other men, but especially when it comes from a woman, is that's demasculating. when it's coming from a woman. But from a man, that's more like a charge. Okay, that's more like a charge. But a woman can't tell a man that, because we don't want to look like that in the eyes of a woman. You see, so a woman cannot tell a man, well, stop acting like a, you can't do that. But another man can. Okay, another man can do that. So it just kind of it's just, yeah, you might think it's a double standard, but that's just the way things are. That's just the way it is. So anyway, that's just a couple of ideas, but we really got to be careful with when a man is bearing his heart, which is what I say, which is synonymous with him being vulnerable when he lays it out there. Because sometimes we do need that. We need that space.
You do.
We need that space. You don't even know how.
Boys,
yes,
need that space.
We need that space.
You need to have someone to talk to, especially now, since the household is mainly ran by women. I think we did the numbers, something like 64-65% of Black households are ran by women. So there are no men in the house, and
even with the ones with the men in the house are ran by women.
I was just focusing in on that, and I was just focusing in on that. We have become women have become too masculine.
Well, I think we're gonna say that because in a way that's we gotta rephrase that. We gotta and the only reason why I'm saying that is because what we're talking about is a temperament, not a polarity. We're talking about a temperament, which means it's an element. She's become fiery. But again, that's a response to something else. So you can't unpack her fieriness without unpacking everything of the reasons why.
Yeah,
that's a sign that things are out of balance.
I'll take that.
So we need to have a full conversation. We can't just point that finger at the women, just like we can't just point our finger at the men.
No, I am not pointing fingers.
No, I'm not saying you, beloved. I'm just talking about. I'm saying because I hear that a lot in our just throughout the society. We talk about women have become too masculine. We can't just point that if you ain't trying to unpack the reasons why.
The reason why I say that is, and it's probably, and I'll put myself out there from what I have experienced coming up. The relationship with my husband, the relationship with other men, I have become a well-kept woman on my own. I don't look for a man to do anything for me. So I guess I'm quote unquote independent, but like my brother said, there's no such thing. We'll revisit that later. And I just do a lot for myself, but I'm learning with you all, I'm learning to fall back.
I don't want to don't want to pull away from what's being said, but like Sabbath Ahmed said, you have to unpack that. But first and foremost, let's be super clear. I mean, I still want to get to the things of violations that sis wanted to, that God level.
I wanted to make this about boys, men.
Right. Well, hold on, sis. Hold on. Real quick. But I also want to be clear. I would say from my perspective, when a man does take the time out to open up on anything with a woman, please understand. When he takes the time out to open up on any level with a woman, that was the first sign of him showing you he trusts you with that responsibility. Out the gate. That means that he assigned you a specific duty, which is, hey, I'm finna share this information with you. Now I'm going to share this information with you. I trust that you will handle me correctly with what I'm about to share with you. That level of trust, John already pointed out, once that happens, it could be something that you can say, and after that, he feels violated. Go to what Sabbath Ahmed said, and now he at a point where, I'm good on her.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing for him more other than survival at that particular point. Now where do I move from her? Because the one thing that I trusted her with, that I opened up on, regardless of what it is, you took that as a sign of weakness. You took that as, okay, yeah, but I heard you, but we ain't really talking about you. You a man. Deal with it. Get over it. Keep it moving.
Ooh.
And then you complaining that he ain't being affectionate. That was his show of affection.
That was I was just gonna get to that other side of it. So when you feel like he has truly detached from you, you're not understanding the fact we are two different beings. We come from two different sects. We all have our different ways of expressing our thought process, our consciousness, our feelings, and our emotions. Until you understand that just because you identify with your feelings in a particular way doesn't subject me to be less of affectionate or want to come to you as looking at you as I think I need some help with this. I'm open. I'm being vulnerable with you. You should never demise that. You should never act as if all right, whatever. At most of the things that men encounter when it comes to our women, our spouse, our lovers, our confidants, our nurturers, it ain't really that we looking at you to fix anything. We hoping you just be supportive.
Yeah.
Half of the time we're too busy struggling on the inside on how to fix it. Let alone I got to look at you and be like, she already said she got a lot going on, and here I'm coming trying to ask you like, yo, Queen, hey, excuse me, I don't mean to bother you. What you think about this? And then you just go left. He like, I shouldn't even said nothing.
Yeah.
Now you got the whole conversation of the man cave.
Created more
he
problems.
being to himself. Yeah, it inspired down something else. He can't even focus no more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
but I'm not.
whole mood.
Yeah. You done changed his whole thought process, his mood, his everything. Now he's outside all the time, or he's always at the gym, or now you got the distance, and you feel like, well, I do everything. I take care of this, and I handle. But you're not taking care of the one thing that he values the most, was the fact that he tried to trust you with a, and I don't like to use the word weak, but with a version of himself. He right now in his mind, in his state of being, he's working on. He's trying to uplift. He's trying to erect. And you just pissed on that? That's a scar that's hard to remove.
Well.
And some of that actually stems from how some mothers treat their sons.
And as this rabbit hole gets bigger, you will
in
find
those
that out
single
too.
Parent homes.
What were the expectations imposed upon him when he was a child?
That too.
What was he able to do? What wasn't he able to do?
Mhm.
Right? How is he seen even by his own mother? How is he seen by his family? You're supposed to be capable. You're supposed to be able to defend yourself at all times. You're not supposed to be a problem. But yet also at the same time, he wasn't given the tools, or he wasn't given the space to express if he had a problem. Dang, boy, why are you up there acting up in school? And he's already in an air of judgment. And so it's like, you can't even get to the real problem because there's no atmosphere. There's nothing informing him that it's okay for him to open up about what was really bothering him, and that we're really just seeking a solution. We're not seeking him to get back in alignment. We're not seeking to control him. Like, hey, get it right. And then he just snap. Oh, yep. You know what? I was tripping. It's not that type of vibe. It's not that type of energy. He hasn't had a model that shows him how to solve problems, especially ones where his emotions are blocking him from seeing the answer clearly. And it goes back to what King Newborn was saying. It's not so much about doing it for him, solving the problem for him. Just give him the space and the skills. All right, hey, you know what? I see that you're really going through something, yo. Like, what's going on? Talk to me. And it has to be, of course, with somebody that he trusts. He needs to trust the atmosphere, right? This
Yeah.
is a boy 7, 9, 12 years old, and he's speaking to somebody that he trusts is going to consider his well-being, that's going to validate his feelings, and that's going to say, hey, it's okay to bring that feeling up. The only way that you can solve the problem is if you let that feeling come up so that it can clear your perception of the problem. Once your perception of the problem is clear, then we can start devising solutions. And I'm not going to come up with the solutions. I'm just going to ask you the appropriate questions, and you're going to find the answer. Because if you take ownership of your problem, you will also have ownership over the solution, and that reinforces your confidence. That reinforces your self-worth. That reinforces your autonomy, your ability to determine yourself or to determine your aims. You're giving that to him at a young age, and he takes that and he builds upon that, and he learns that this is the process. This is the way in which I solve problems emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, whatever. That boy learns that. But if he isn't given the environment to practice those processes, he might learn it in his 20s or 30s. But what is the implication here if he's delayed in learning that? And this is an essential skill. This is something that most human beings already have, right? So you're already in a. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say real quick before you get off that point. So he that won't happen until he is in an environment of people that believe in him. Period.
Ooh.
Mm.
Fucking bars.
Whoa.
That's it.
Bars.
That is it.
Yeah.
If he's not even seen as greatness from a child, if everything around him only points out the fact that you are useless, I don't need you, I'm independent, you in the way, and come on, man,
That's it. That's a shortcut. Okay.
Shook it.
Show him you believe in him, and I guarantee you'll produce a very effective, powerful black man. I promise you.
Sabbath Ahmed pointed out the dopamine feeling that you get from affirmations, even as a child, that rush, that adrenaline from that, man, you take over anything from a child standpoint. You got a 9-year-old like Skywalker just alluded to. This young man just 9 or 10 just finished high school. I mean, in his mind, what are you saying? My foundation is we set out something, we accomplish, and we keep moving. Since we keep moving, here are my goals. These are my list of things I'm demanding of myself. Y'all making this be like a phenomenon, like, nah, this how we get around. This how we get down to my home front.
Yeah. In my word, this is ordinary, not extraordinary.
This is regular. You feel me? This is regular. This not premium. This regular.
So I guarantee that example of that young man, somebody had stopped the generational trauma generations before him, because I guarantee you he was not raised by a mom and dad who was still dealing with their own generational traumas.
Village.
Somebody had stopped it.
Village.
Somebody had stopped it, and it gave them. Now you're talking about safe space. Safe space is the absence of generational trauma.
Yes.
Okay.
Man.
So that's what allows us to keep going and going and going.
Say it one more time. Safe space.
I said safe space is the absence of generational trauma.
Trauma. Wow. Yes. Tools and resources. Having access to love, respect, honor, dignity. Come on, man.
That's right.
It's going to start with us.
That's right. But somebody's got to go first.
And that means you willing to sacrifice your life. You're willing to lay your life down and say, look, this might not even happen in my time, but I'm doing the work now.
Let me go first.
I'm doing the work now so that others can live better than I did.
Come on now. That's it. Now you're talking.
We in church.
in church.
I was over here, I'm getting goosebumps as you are talking. That stuff is so real. Yes. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Woo. That's,
No,
that's that fiery Dion right there.
So
yeah.
I would like to address this question down here as it relates to the poll. So we had 16 respondents. Let's see. Out of those 16 respondents, we said, 11 said absolutely, and 5 said not really. We had 12 comments in here. Josephine says, I'm not sure if it's homophobia more so than it is embarrassment or shame. They may not want people to know they were sexually abused, regardless of what their sexual orientation may be. God level respondent said research shows that Black boys are more likely to keep sexual trauma to themselves out of fear. Oh, this one is a long post by Aretha. Okay, I'm gonna come back to that one.
Thank you, honey.
Yeah, that was very verbose. I gotta come back to that one.
Yeah.
Donna says, I think not. Anyone with a reasonable amount of depth to their concept of childhood sexual trauma understands that the experience should not have had any bearing on one's sexual identity. Being homophobic is a shallow concept in and of itself. We are all human first and foremost. Okay. Ivy says, for Black men, hell yeah, homophobia is a factor in them disclosing their childhood sexual trauma. Let's keep it a buck, folks. Homosexuality is still taboo in the darker spaces within the Black community. So while there's shame attached to childhood sexual trauma, there's also more shame attached to the same-sex abusee because of the fact that they let some dude touch them. Just like there's shame attached to bisexual men. Just like there's shame attached to speaking openly about it. I mean, should I continue? Geez, we got to do better. Travis says, maybe it's not knowing what would happen to their parents or how their parents would react. Parents in prison isn't a good outcome for a kid either.
Yeah. But I'm thinking, though, I like that first response talking about it's more shame and embarrassment rather than homophobia, because homophobia is literally the dislike of gay people or homosexual men. You know what I'm saying? So it's more so I don't think it's really homophobia. I really think it is embarrassment or shame, especially for somebody who identifies as heterosexual. They, we heterosexual men do not want to be viewed in no way as homosexual. Right. It doesn't make them homophobic, but it's just that I don't want you to be confused by my choice.
Yeah, but see, that's the difference. That's the difference, Saba, is there's a difference between homophobia. There's a phobia aspect is the fear. So you're correct in that. Yeah. Normal, healthy, heterosexual men don't want to be viewed as something that they're not. But when we're talking about the homophobia, that's the fear that's associated with. But I was saying that in the context of disclosure, right? So I know for Black men, especially heterosexual Black men, masculinity is a very important experience for us. It's a very important identity. It's a very important energy for us. So we don't view, as a culture, homosexuality as masculine. We kind of we're creating these distortions, right? But even more so, this is about identity. So an act that is homosexual in nature is being tied to their sexual identity as a heterosexual male. And so that's where I say the homophobia is a factor. I think that's what a lot of the respondents are alluding to, is that, it's a factor. It's not the main factor. Right?
Gotcha.
But okay. It's for a population of boys. Yeah.
They
it's
don't
disclosing
want
knowing that there's a fear out there. It's disclosing knowing that there's a phobia
being,
out there.
liking the same sex,
But also not even, and that's just one level, right? That's at child sexual trauma. That's just at child sexual trauma.
Yeah.
it homophobia in Black culture is so pervasive that, again, even if you disclose certain feelings about certain things, if you act a certain way, if you talk a certain way, it what is it we say? We say pause. We used to say no homo. We say pause. So if you cough the wrong way, if you laugh a certain way, if you blink a certain way, like, yo, pause. And for Black men, we do not want nobody saying pause on. What you mean? Oh man, it's like, yo, but no, you
So
know,
that's code
and
word.
That's code for they think something is, that's code.
Yeah.
right. So when
I've
you're
never
in,
heard
yeah,
that
so when
before,
you're
but
in an
okay.
environment like, no,
No.
oh man,
I've
yeah, it's
I've heard
heavy.
that. I didn't know
I mean,
that's why it was
especially in
used. I've
Harlem.
heard.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that. I didn't know that's why it was being said though. I just thought it
All
was
right.
like,
I learned
Yeah,
something
like
new.
if a guy
that's
says, "Man,
interesting.
it's going down tonight," somebody will come in like, "Yo, pause." I'm like, what did I say? Like, you said it's going down tonight. Like, what you mean? Like, oh, no, I didn't even like that, homie. He ain't even like, nah, bro, nah, you sus, you
Oh
sus.
wow.
You know, so Black men, that's like a very sensitive thing for a lot of us,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And of course, if you're a Black man that's in a mature circle, you don't have to worry about that. But especially the younger generation. No, I can't even say the younger generation. I can't even say, because Cameron and all them OGs, they still doing that, man. They still doing that. You know, they like 40 something years old and they still saying pause, right? It's like, you don't have to
Yeah.
question that, right? But
It's more
you don't
accepted.
have to question that.
It's
But
more
even
accepted
still,
in the younger generation. It's more accepted seem to be now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Even though it's being more accepted, and it's like, yo, why do I have to lie about that? Why do I have to lie about that when I can just come out, say what I am, and then boom, hey, you just gonna have to respect it, right? But for Black men, they don't even want to be misperceived. Even though the confidence is there, the security is there, they don't even want to be slightly misperceived as homosexual, even in the slightest sense.
Well, you know, I mean, let's take this example for it. And I know, I don't know if you've had this experience in the gym, in the locker room. Okay, let's go there. I'm gonna take y'all behind the scenes for a little bit, so y'all listen up. Y'all might not get this no other time, but there's a difference. Let's just put it like this: when we're in a men's locker room, and there's a homosexual man that comes into the locker room, there is an uncomfortable feeling. There's a very uncomfortable feeling. One that's there that if that was an actual woman in the locker room, that same uncomfortable feeling would not be there. But it's an uncomfortable feeling if there's a homosexual man, is in there, because that's different. It's not the fact that it's, there's just something else, something about that energy. We would prefer a woman be in the locker room than a homosexual man. You see what I'm saying? So, and I'm talking about the heterosexual men that's in there. So there's this uncomfortable feeling, but that comes from within. But it has something to do with feeling like you're being, in a way, violated.
Forced,
That
violated.
your sexuality has been violated. At that point, by being seen in a way you don't want to be seen. Looked at in a way you don't want to be looked at. So you don't mind that from a woman, but from a man, you don't want that. You see what I'm saying? So it's that kind of stuff. So when we're talking about that, that heterosexual thing, it's just that there's like a lot of pushback. We wanna keep our sexual identity. We're good with that, and we build everything that we are defined as on that, on that thing, and that's not to be violated in no kind of way. You see, so and I'm pretty sure that even in the gay community, it's also the same thing.
Ooh.
Like they have ways that they don't want to be looked at by certain men who are not that way. Who are not that way. So so it's just a whole different thing, that we have to also consider. There's a lot of psychological, and it really is all psychological. All of it is. Nobody's going to force you to go where you don't want to go. Okay. Period. Period.
Right.
I would like to add to what Saba is saying. Better yet, just tonight as a whole period. I understand the time frame. When we talk about violation, I think I know as a from a child growing up to a teen, a young man coming into adulthood. A lot of the things that we talk about are certain provisions that to a black child, black young man, black boy,
Yes.
black baby.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things from the moment after learning how to stand up straight, pee in the toilet, acknowledging the fact you have a deep voice, you are conscious to be able to make decisions, choices, and executions. After that, that male, that black male, has to earn his status to even be a black man. He has to earn that and everything that comes with it. But he's taught he's none of that from day one. No support on that of any kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He has to fight for that status, which ties over into like what John is saying. You got to say pause. He can't say, "Man, I love them suckers." Pause.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He's constantly fighting to defend himself against the world and his own home front, and then also his past of his upbringing as a child.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? And I know we all like to say. I'm not gonna say we all like to say. The narrative that's being pushed is the fact that women have suffered so much, endured so much, been through so much pain, to where they independently is raising our nation.
Yep.
But as we saying that, are we saying it from the standpoint that we understand that the nation that you're raising, you have no safe place for that little black boy to grow up, to even figure out who he is before a title as a black man is labeled on him from an abstract standpoint, and saying again, yeah, you're this, but you're none of that. So he's constantly again perpetuating the fact that I gotta be this, I gotta become that, he ain't got no time to really figure out, this is what I suffer from, this is what I'm hurt about, this is what I don't have confidence in.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting no affection, no love, no support of any kind from the foundation. So like what Saba said, somebody took time out a long time ago for that young man to be able to graduate high school at 9. So when we start unpacking these things, we're going to find out some truths, but then we also going to break down some facts. And some of these facts, it ain't pretty.
At all.
It ain't pretty. When we really start breaking it down, we can do the blame game and we can play victim. Then we want to point the finger and say who's supposed to be accountable and who's supposed to.
Right.
There's no instructional book to this.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying because God left things that people don't want to talk about. We talk about solutions. We can come all day from different perspectives of how suffrage is, how pain is, how trauma is. But I just want to allude to the fact on this podcast, we come with solutions.
Period.
One of these solutions, period. And one of those main solutions, respect the other person, at least to the point that you allow yourself to listen to where they're coming from. Just
That's
allow
it.
yourself to just
Listen.
bluntly up and just listen, just to see. You might find out something. You might learn something.
Yeah.
You might be missing something the whole time. And I'm saying from your son, your grandsons, the little kids, the babies who are supposed to be the future 25 years from this particular point, did you take the time out to listen? Did you create a space for this child? Because whether you like it or not, as we get older, we're dumbing down because technology is constantly advancing to the point We are helpless. We are thinkless. We feel that you're just supposed to push the button. The button says start. Just push that button. And voila,
Yep.
magic. Everything supposed to just happen.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we
Yep.
do is so thinkless. We not taking the time to think. We're not taking the time to really look down and say, well, in my generation, what I grew up in, it was like this. It's not the same no more.
Yep. And pretty soon we're gonna be phased out. Like this, we're like the last generation that was attached to a society where there was no internet.
Mm.
You see, we're gonna be phased out, and then by that time, the world ain't gonna be able to imagine a world without the internet. You're like, what is that about? But shoot, that ain't coming about. I was in college, and when I was in college becoming an engineer, in fact, in my I was still taking typing on typewriters in high school. We wouldn't do it on keyboards, on computer keyboards. We had typewriters. So yeah, so that's been phased out. And so what we have to understand is then what does it look like then? How will abuse and violation then transfer to this new world? That's brewing right beneath our feet even now, with the upcoming AI, artificial intelligence, and all the applications that's going to be harboring the AI, robots, pets, all kind of stuff, even biological AI. Where they're going to be having stuff attached to your brain, to the neurons in your brain. You're going to become transhumanized at that point. So, what does violation look like to our children at that time? So so you're talking about getting rid of the way that we had experienced violations and things like that. Well, it's going to end, but it's just going to transcend into something else. It's going to transfer into something else. And so, I mean, those are the questions that we need to be asking also as this world evolves into what it is. It is a very scary idea, by the way, Shelley. So absolutely. So yeah, so that's the thing. And with the conveniences, the more conveniences a man has, and I ain't talking about a man as in male, I'm talking about man as in our species, which includes all of us, the more spiritually stagnant we become. We become spiritually stagnant. And if we are spiritually stagnant, then we have moved completely off our purpose for existing. Now leave it at that.
You posted a question.
1,000-fold. What can we do? Oh, okay.
1,000.
So to address this question, this was from an earlier post. Also, we had 19 respondents. Blake says, "I wish I knew." To this question right here, what are some signs? He said, "I wish I knew." God Level said, "Promiscuity." Diamond said, "They may be sexually abusing others." Dana versus Nicole says, "Change of behavior, mood swings, withdrawn, or loss of interest." Nati says, "Sexual acts at too young of an age, violence, mood swings, and defiance." Let's see. Kusha says they don't want to be around a certain person, scared to communicate, or not acting like their usual selves. Piece of cake conversations. So we know who that is. That's Amina.
Yes.
Shout out to Amina. She
Shout
gave a
out.
very she gave a pretty lengthy reply. Dissociation, which a lot of people tend to miss because it may present itself as a young male displaying deep interest into fictional / fantasy world such as comics, movies, books, music, video games. These are common interests of young males, but you have to look into their depth of interest and into the why. So it sounds like escapism. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to James. James says, being that I was personally sexually abused by the same sex who happened to be a family member, pushed me to somehow be more promiscuous with women, to somehow validate that, number one, I'm not gay, and also that I am valuable. Then he follows up with a reply. He says, "There's no disrespect here to the same-sex community. Just me personally, I was raised in a lesbian household and was made to feel uncomfortable for liking or being attracted to the opposite sex." Corey says promiscuity and being easily angered, and yeah, so that's where those were our replies. So
Go back to
Wow.
James.
James.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, go back to his comment and the follow-up that he made. I applaud him. That was
Yes, absolutely.
I
That is wow.
applaud him. I read that. I was on my way to work. My mouth just dropped. I was like, I'm on the highway, like, oh my God, I need to read this. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that is, yeah, that is
Still
very
posted
eye
there.
opening. Yeah, that's eye
You should
opening right
read
there.
that.
you know what's interesting about his post is so I met James. We were co-workers. I mean, that's like a brother to me. We met in Kuwait. This was like around 2010, 2009, 2010. We were working in that warehouse together. And James is very special to me because he was the first one that I felt comfortable, first man especially, felt comfortable disclosing my childhood sexual abuse to. So to find out that he experienced the same thing, and then, you know, we didn't go into details, but just to hear that, like, oh, wait, this is what it looks like too. And, you know, the trajectory was pretty much the same. You know, he follows up, he said, there's no tears needed. Those experiences made me who I am today. Also, I'm cool with the violator. He received help shortly before he passed away with AIDS. My mom and I are extremely close now. The bullies that jumped me during that are either dead or we were cool before I left my home state. And I now possess a different type of compassion for various types of people in their respective situations. Yeah. So even
You talking about transcendence? Look at that.
right.
That right there is that's a divine response. Free of resentment. There's no resentment.
Forgiveness.
Yes.
I take my head off to you, James.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
I take my head off to you, James.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's
So
that's
what
somebody
also-
who
so what-
a master telling his story. Yes.
Yeah. So what's even interesting about that, and this is what I was talking to the Queen about, you know, so I was telling she's familiar with James as well. And so I realized that experience was very foundational, because even talking to another one of my homies, actually I found out several, you know, there were several other experiences where that experience that I had with him, just having that safe space that we talked about, that we went through that, right? As I got older, I came across other men who experienced the same thing. And I realized, you know, the common factor was that they felt safe and trusting of me enough to let me know. But also, as Saba was saying, somebody's got to do it first. Someone's got to initiate. Someone's got to say it's okay to talk about it. You have to model the behavior, because for a lot of us, we don't even have the language. Let's start there. You're a boy. You're not given the freedom to express yourself emotionally and even some of your ideas, right? And then you're not even given the tools to improve your literacy or to improve your articulation. So something traumatic, it doesn't even have to be childhood sexual trauma. It could be that you just saw somebody die. You witnessed somebody getting shot. Right? As is the instance for a lot of Black boys. You could witness somebody getting shot. You could witness a rape, whatever, right? But you don't have the language to make these experiences real enough to tell somebody else. You don't even know where to start. So yeah, there's something wrong, but you don't have the language to identify what's wrong. You can't even identify how to speak on it and where to begin. There's no model. There's no model in this Black boy's mind on what to do and how to do it. And so in this age, with the technology, as we were stating, there's more visibility of all of our human experiences, right? So this is also a prime opportunity to see more Black men come forth and speak on these issues and pass down that language and say, this is how you say this, and this is what the courage looks like, right? And then by exhibiting that, you can also be an advocate for the brothers in your circle. I just found it, I was flabbergasted, like, you too? But then also like, okay, so why is he telling me this? And then recognize that, oh, it's trust. And hearing that, dang, I didn't even tell my mama that. I haven't even told my wife that. It's like, and so it goes back to that. All right, it's not a male female thing. It's not that. It's, did you create the space for him to say or express himself? If you haven't done that, you could get mad. You could get mad at him for not. I thought we were together. I thought, you trusted me. I thought we were intimate. It's like, yeah, we're intimate on these things right here. I gave you that, but this right here, oh no, we're not touching that. I don't even want to be reminded of that. So why am I going to talk about it with you? I don't even want to be reminded of that. Right. And one other notion, right? Again, talking to my queen about it is, after talking to James, right, I had a series of spiritual experiences. One of them involving me having to revisit an event where, my dad was physically abusing my mom. And I realized after all those years, I never told that little boy, just reflecting back, speaking to that little boy that witnessed that and called the police. I never told that little boy within me, that child, hey, dang, man, that sucks that you had to go through that. I never gave myself that space, that acknowledgement. Wow, you did a good thing. You did a courageous thing. And I'm sorry you had to go through that, John. A lot of Black men have not given that thing to themselves. And they're also afraid, but also, with that fear, it's exacerbated because they don't know how. Even if they wanted to give it to themselves, they wouldn't know how. And so so our responsibility as evolved Black men is, when we acquire that skill to create that safe space, we got to pass that on down some way, somehow. I don't care if it's with your own seeds. I don't care if it's with the community. But that skill set needs to be passed down in the culture because it's not prevalent. We have a high demand for it. So, I just want to encourage that. If you've went through that and you've found the courage to speak on it, advocate. Ain't nothing wrong with advocacy, right? But don't neglect your brethren in that, because in a way we are kind of being selfish by just withholding that skill set, withholding those experiences, keeping them in the dark. Like, I get it. Hey, I don't want nobody else in my business. I don't want nobody in my business. I don't want nobody knowing I'm going to therapy. I need them to see me as strong. Okay, but why not also say that, yo, I'm both. I'm strong in these areas. I'm weak in these areas. But also, this is a thing that happened and it's no longer present. Like, that's in the past. That's history. I am present. I transcended that experience. I learned from it and it does not define me. Having that mindset, that language, changes the perception of it. It dampens whatever negative influence it has, or whatever stigmatism, any stigma that it has over that. So it's important that we have that language, we develop that language and we pass it on down, having those conversations and just figuring out, all right, once we have the conversation, then we can talk about solutions. How do we get past this? But ultimately, this podcast is going to always recommend that you go to a professional mental health or to a mental health professional. We're going to always advocate. We're always going to push for that because you know what you're getting with the therapist, right? So don't take that upon yourselves, men, ladies and gentlemen. Do not take that upon yourselves, especially considering the implications here. You could really cause more damage than good.
That's right.
Yeah. Yes. You know what? We can breathe. Cause that was a lot. These next 2 weeks are about you all. This is strictly about Black boys, growing into young adults, and not having that safe space to talk about those things. This is about you all. This is all you all. Ow.
I'm gonna post a website here, by the way. Just give me a moment. This
Go
is just for
ahead.
those who require some confidential support. There's this website
Mm.
out there called 1in6.org. I believe, yeah, 1in6.org.
Someone
One
needs
in
to create
six.
a website called Safe Space.
Not to be confused with MySpace. Right? The slapstick comedy there.
Hey, John, he said slapstick. Pause.
Right?
Oh
There would be a pause, wouldn't it?
That would be a pause.
There
You
would be
know
a
what?
pause.
Slapstick. Pause. Okay,
Well,
I
I'm glad
get
I
it.
didn't make that term up.
Yeah.
But
Oh my God.
also, this right here. This is
Well,
also a
yeah.
good resource for men out there that's seeking some help
Mansurvivor.org.
regarding this particular matter.
Malesurvivor.org.
You know, I know a lot of the times, and I hear it out there. There's no resources for us. The resources are out there. They're just not publicized as vastly. You gotta,
Yeah,
you
they ain't
Right.
gotta,
Yeah.
tangible.
As
you gotta
fastly
get
as
it.
they would for a woman. Yeah. So
Why do
this
you
is
think
all
that
about you
is?
all.
Woo.
Do you want me to say it
Part
raw?
of it is because we're not having.
Raw?
Part of it is because we're not having the conversation publicly. I mean, we are, but
Mm-hmm.
we're not seeing it as pervasive enough. And then, of course, you know, there's a cultural perception here. You know, men are strong, men are resilient. You know, men are self-reliant. They ain't got no problems like this. You know, there's a cultural perception, a cultural assumption that we don't need it. We good. There ain't no problem with these men. Oh, men go through depression. Oh, okay. I don't believe it. You know, there's
Yeah.
that.
But then
What
you
does
don't
it
think
look
so?
like when a man is depressed? Oh, I'm sorry.
and
Keep
look at
going.
look at the experience with, and you know, I hate to say this, but the experience with Chris Brown and Rihanna, that situation, you know, nobody wanted to hear Chris Brown's side of the story. As soon as he
Ooh.
started to tell it, he got condemned even more. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
he got condemned even more, but nobody wanted to hear his side of the story. All they wanted to hear was him apologize because, again, he was already guilty. He was the
Right.
assailant in that particular thing. So this is the kind of stuff that we are talking about, that we don't have a chance. It's like we don't have a voice. So that's why we already know how we're looked at, you know. And then, like you say, there's not enough platforms or enough room for our voices to be heard.
Yes.
Space is not made. Ashe.
That's heavy. Did you just hear what was said? Anybody just take that in? Any listener, anybody watching this? Did you? That's
They don't wanna
heavy
hear
to
it,
the
bro.
point that can make you cry.
For real.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Just really, really trip out what he just said.
Mm-hmm.
It's not created for black men, period. Or me, I'm gonna say men, period. It's not there. But
Mm-hmm.
yet we're instructed. You need to do this, create, and then do this. Be a father, and then do this. Hold down the job, be a protector, provider, and a whole list of other things. But we don't need you.
Ain't that something?
I do.
Matter of fact,
I do.
I'm gonna go even further. We are so much pushed beyond the point of saying we don't need men, they are currently right now testing how to make artificial sperm in mice. Do you
Like that's the only thing that we're needed for. When
feel
all
me? That's what I'm
institutions,
trying to allude to. Do you know
all
how heavy this
civilizations were all
is?
built by men. Mm-hmm.
This is why you have men. What they say, oh man, can you imagine that this is something that you learn from watching certain TV programs? You don't have the
Oh
Bill
yeah.
Cosby's no more. You don't have stuff like that. Matter of fact,
Mm.
you were to ask somebody that, you don't even know of the Bill Cosby rape case. That's what you know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't look at the fact that you had black men that held down jobs like being a CMT, being a nurse, being a doctor, being a lawyer, being a fireman, being a police officer, and still
Scientists.
go
Mm-hmm.
home, and a scientist, but
Mm-hmm.
still go home, and none of that means, excuse my language, none of that means shit when he get to the crib.
Mm-hmm.
Still ain't no man.
Mm.
You understand? He went to go get a status in order to be acknowledged as a status as being a black man.
Mm.
I'll say all that opens up so many cans of worms, and
Yes,
Man,
it
you ain't
does.
no
And we at 151.
man.
yes,
Mm.
yeah.
Because
So-
I could hear it in his voice. We at 151. John, what you got for us this evening?
I got an oldie but a goodie. It's an oldie but a goodie,
We'll take it.
and it's one that I feel like we need more of.
Oh,
I'm asking for compassion. Compassion that's calm, compassion that's strong. I'm passing it on like it's genetic. I'm sympathetic to your suffering so I can help. Before I gave it to you, I learned to give it to myself. It's essential for my health. Good-hearted, it's hardly good to care about someone or something I never felt. That's superficial. Sometimes that's how we use it, though. It's excusable how compassion gets staged like musicals. Am I delusional? I see you like the respirating breathing tubes you're breathing through. I'm treating you with critical care, serving you this glass of optimism that's clear enough for you to see it through, and drink enough for me and you. When you're dying of thirst and your humor was dry, like the memes about Will Smith, Tyrese, and Kanye crying from hurt. Everyone's laughing at a joke that I don't get, called compassion. But don't get it confused. Empathy makes you feel, but compassion makes you move. It's astounding, a profound thing. Prince said that compassion is an action word without boundaries. It's a necessity. I fashion it abundantly. Sometimes the ghetto treats it as a luxury. Analyze the state of humanity, kind of crazy. Teenagers deal with depression. We call them lazy, like the single black mothers in the 90s raising babies that now have to choose between school and keeping the baby of a father that was molested as a child. Kill the hate with compassion. Bury it with a smile. May my words of affirmation be your eulogy and you cry at your own weight, because I beautifully speak life to your death wishes. My best wish is the kiss of life from Sade with the red lipstick. Spot your cheek and it hits it to wake you, not sedate you, because a love tap hits different. Compassion is a prayer in the flesh. It's multiracial, yet it's still oppressed. Love me to life. Don't love me to death. If I'm drowning in a sea of regrets or swimming underwater in an ocean full of stress, I just hope that my compassion takes the form of a lifeguard vest. Yes, I love gifting people stuff, but I exercise my heart by lifting people up. First come awareness, then come passion. I Learn to be patient and be less reactive and more understanding and more upstanding, thinking out the box to be more outstanding. Put myself in your shoes. We wear different sizes, though. The blind ain't leading the blind. No, my eyes are closed. So I can understand what it means to be sightless. As you take me to places that you described with your words, see, I found epiphanies through my empathy. Heartbreak dance so well, it don't miss a beat. Heart too wealthy to ever be broke. Heart eyes see too clear to ever lose hope. See, I'm clearly on my paper like a laminate, but I'm spiritually wealthy because I'm compassionate. And I hope you are too. Bless.
Peace. Peace.
Peace.
Shay.
That was good.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Okay.
That
We all
was
need
fire.
That
We
was
all
brilliant. That was fire.
That was fire. That was fire.
Ah,
We
shit.
all need it. We all need
We
it.
all need compassion.
We all need it. Oh my God. I want to thank everyone for jumping in on tonight's live. I'm sorry I wasn't here the first 45 minutes. Please excuse my tardiness. I'm working on getting that situated. My brother said that this day was going to come and I was going to have to make a choice, and the choice is being made right now.
Choose.
Decisions. Boy.
I know he really, I don't know if he spoke that into existence or he just, had a premonition of
No,
it.
he knew. He's
He
calculating. He knew this was
have
coming.
to make a decision. Either it was going to be this or this. You're going to have to make a choice. And, I was telling him today, I said, I do this podcast every Sunday. I'm coming up on 2 years. I can't see myself not being here every other Sunday. I said, it's not going to happen. So, we could either give me another day or give me off at 3 because I need to be at home by that time, fresh, and ready to jump on, and I hate coming in straight from work because I'm still de-stressing from work and what has happened. So I can't really get into it. I have to sit back and listen, I appreciate you all. You are freaking amazing. I was listening on the way and I was like, what am I worried about? My boys, I'm sorry, my brothers. I do often call you my boys. I ain't gonna need
That's
to
okay.
lie. Okay.
That's okay.
I was like,
We
my
ain't put off
boys
by
got
that.
this. My boys got. I was on the way. I'm like, my boys got this. So yeah, I knew that it was still in. This show is still in good hands, even when I'm not here. I love my brother. God level things we don't want to talk about. This is why we have this show. This is a safe space. I love him for that. John is always going to be intellectual. Saba Diamond is going to always give you the spiritual aspect of it. I appreciate that. This is we full a circle around here. So yeah, thank you. I don't have no complaints. Again, thank you to all of our new followers. And I did see a couple of our new followers actually invite other people to the show. Thank you for that. Thank you to all who watched tonight. Even if you watch later.
Shout out to Shelly.
Yes.
Shelly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And please keep
Shelly always rolling with me. Thank you, Shelly. See how he's rolling.
We are on several different apps. YouTube, Spreaker, Twitter. Of course, we have our Facebook page, things that people don't want to talk about. Do not be afraid to invite people over to the group, please.
And iHeartRadio.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forget I said it.
Yeah, and we're actually on iHeartRadio, well, Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio got to be the last because that's the big deal for us. We want to break their 100. I'm not going to even lie. I want that for us. And if you like that blue and gold hat that John is wearing, feel free to stop by God Level, www.godlevel1.com, and pick you up one. Comes in a nice, fancy little brown box with God Level tape going around it.
There it
So
is.
4 different colors, snapbacks and semi-fitted. We're gonna go with semi-fitted. So yeah, again, thank you all. We really appreciate your support. John, you got anything you want to say?
I love y'all.
Diamond?
To be continued.
Oh, absolutely. King Newborn.
I am of service.
Absolutely. John, you got me?
Yeah. Salute y'all.